I got fired for feeding a hungry old man. That's how it started. No warning, no second chances, just a finger in my face and a manager yelling, "You're done here, Lonnie. Get out." And the worst part? He said it loud enough for the entire cafe to hear, like I was some thief instead of the woman who'd been showing up at 6 a.m. every morning for the last 3 years. But let me back up a sec. It was a slow Sunday morning at Stillwater Cafe, the kind where regulars nurse their coffee for an hour and everybody knows each other's business. I was on shift like always, refilling mugs, tossing out warm smiles, trying to ignore the flickering ceiling light we'd been complaining about for weeks. That's when I saw him, Mr. Joe Callahan, shuffling in with that same limp he'd had since forever. Vietnam vet. Real quiet. Always sat in the back by the window, rain or shine. Never ordered more than a small coffee, black, no sugar. But this time something felt off. He was shaking more than usual, and his jacket looked thinner, like it had lost the last of its warmth. When I walked over, I asked, "You all right, Mr. Callahan?" He didn't say much, just kind of nodded, lips pressed tight, but I could tell. He hadn't eaten. Probably not since yesterday. Maybe longer that I didn't even think. Just grabbed a hot plate, scrambled eggs, toast, sausage, grits, whole thing, and slid it in front of him like it was the most natural thing in the world. No charge, no questions. Just food. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I wasn't trying to get caught. I was just doing what felt right. Unfortunately, my manager, Brent, had the eyesight of a hawk when it came to the register. He saw the plate, saw the lack of a ticket, and stormed out of his little office like I'd stolen cash from the drawer. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he barked, loud enough to rattle the silverware. I tried to explain, but he wasn't listening. "We're not a charity. You want to feed people, do it on your own dime." I remember glancing around. Everybody was staring. A few people had their forks frozen midair. Mr. Callahan tried to stand up, voice shaky as a leaf in wind, and said, "Sir, I can pay you back." She was just being kind. But Brent waved him off like trash. "Kindness doesn't keep the lights on," he snapped. Then he turned back to me. "You're done here, Lonnie. Get out." And that was it. Just like that, 3 years down the drain. I untied my apron, heart thudding so hard I could barely hear myself think. Some of the regulars murmured something. Someone said it wasn't right, but no one really moved. I mean, what were they going to do? Well, one person did. There was this young guy at the counter. Deshaun always wore this beat-up leather jacket and tipped in fives even when he just ordered coffee. He watched it all unfold, real quiet. Then I saw him pull out his phone. He turned slightly away, said, "Yeah, it's me. We've got a situation." Didn't think much of it at the time. Figured maybe he was just calling his girl or something. I was gathering my stuff when I heard the door slam open so hard the bell almost fell off. The whole cafe jumped. And in walked 3 Marines full dress blues, hats on, shoes polished like mirrors. The tallest one scanned the room like he was clearing a battlefield, then locked eyes with Mr. Callahan. They marched over and, I swear to God, snapped to attention and saluted him. "Sergeant Callahan," the lead one said, voice like thunder. "We heard there was a problem." Dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop, or Brent's jaw hitting the floor. He stumbled out from behind the counter, stuttering, I didn't know. You didn't ask." The Marine cut in, eyes hard as granite, and that's when it hit me. Mr. Callahan wasn't just a vet. He was their sergeant. Probably saved lives, buried brothers, carried people through hell, and Brent had tossed him aside like he was nobody. Callahan stood up, slow but steady, and said, "This young lady showed me more respect than I've gotten in years. And you fired her for that." The lead Marine turned to Brent. "You've got two choices," he said, voice low but firm. "Rehire her, or we make sure every vet in this city knows exactly how you treat your own." Brent opened his mouth, probably to argue, but nothing came out. He just kind of stood there, paling by the second. I didn't say a word, didn't trust my voice, but my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from everything. Relief, anger, disbelief. By the end of that day, I was back behind the counter. Mr. Callahan's usual table had a little reserved sign on it, and his plate, on the house, was piled higher than I'd ever dared before. The Marines didn't stay. They just gave Callahan a firm pat on the shoulder, nodded at me, and walked out like they'd finished their mission. The last one out turned back, tipped his hat at me, and said, "Ma'am." And yeah, I smiled. Couldn't help it. You know, some folks spend their whole lives following rules, thinking the system will protect them if they just stay in line. But sometimes you gotta break the damn rules to do what's right. I didn't feed that man because I wanted thanks. I did it because hunger shouldn't be a death sentence, not in a country where people wear uniforms like that for folks like him. Thing is, the rules didn't feed him. Kindness did. Now I don't know what you'd have done in my shoes. Maybe you'd have followed orders, kept your job, looked away. Maybe not. But if this story makes you feel something, anger, pride, maybe both, I want to hear it. What do you think? Was I wrong for what I did? Was Brent right to fire me? Or did those Marines say what needed to be said? Let's talk about it, because sometimes doing the right thing starts with saying something out loud. You'd think that after something like that, things would quiet down. But nope, that was just the spark that a week later, I walked back into Morningside, not as some nervous employee, but with my head high, apron clean, and a line of regulars waiting for me. Folks were treating me like I'd done something heroic, but honestly, I just couldn't let that man sit there hungry, not on my watch. That's not heroism. That's decency. That's being raised right. Anyway, Mr. Callahan, or I guess I should say Sergeant Callahan, started showing up more often after that. Always in that same seat by the window, always early, like he wanted to beat the crowd. We talked more, too, about his time in Nam, his wife who passed 3 years ago, the dog he used to have named Reggie. Stuff he probably hadn't told a soul in years. He said he liked talking to me because I didn't rush him. I listened. Then one morning, he brought someone with him. At first I thought it was one of his VA buddies. This young guy in a bomber jacket, real clean cut, but eyes that had seen too much, you know the type. Turns out it was his grandson, Trey. Fresh out the Corps, just got stationed nearby. Trey was quiet, respectful, but I noticed how his jaw tightened every time someone glanced their way. I knew that look. It was armored that we talked a bit, and somewhere between refilling his coffee and dropping off his pancakes, Trey asked me something kind of strange. He said, "Miss Kesha, you ever think about managing your own place?" I laughed, like full-on laughed. 'Cause girl, I'd just barely gotten my job back, and now this Marine's talking like I should be opening a chain. But he wasn't joking. He said, "There's a whole lot of vets in this city. Some of them barely get by. What you did for my granddad. That's the kind of heart we need more of. Not just in diners. Everywhere." I didn't know what to say, so I just topped off his mug and said, "I appreciate that, but bills don't pay themselves." He smiled, but didn't push it. Not then. But a seed had been planted, and things at Morningside, well, let's just say the shine wore off real quick. Sure, they rehired me. After getting publicly humiliated by 3 Marines, they didn't really have a choice. But the manager? Still the same old crusty man with a calculator for a heart. Passive-aggressive comments, cutting my hours, making me train new hires with zero thanks. I wasn't fired anymore, but I wasn't welcome either. One afternoon, about a month later, Mr. Callahan didn't show that. I figured maybe he had a doctor's appointment or just needed rest. But then 2 days passed. Then 3. Finally Trey came in alone, sat down in the same booth, ordered black coffee, nothing else. I brought it over and asked, real gentle, "Is everything okay?" He looked up, and that armor I told you about? It cracked. Just a little. My granddad passed 2 nights ago. In his sleep. My heart sank. I sat down across from him without even asking. He pulled something from his coat, a wrinkled envelope with my name on it, written in shaky pen. Inside was a note. From Mr. Callahan. "Kesha, you reminded me that dignity doesn't retire. That even an old soldier can still be seen, heard, and respected. Thank you for the breakfast, the kindness, and the conversation. You gave me something to look forward to. Keep doing what you're doing. You matter more than you know." I cried right there in the booth. Didn't even care who saw. And that's when Trey said it again. We should open something. In his name. He already had the beginnings of a plan. A nonprofit cafe, veteran-run, community-fed. Meals pay what you can. Nobody turned away. We'd call it Reggie's, after Mr. Callahan's old dog, because it made him smile, and because every soldier deserves a loyal place to land at a first. It felt like a dream too big for a girl who barely paid rent. But Trey? He knew people. Fellow vets who'd cook, clean, build. A retired colonel who offered seed money. Even a city councilwoman who said, "You're what this neighborhood's been missing." 6 months later, Reggie's opened its doors. First week, the line was out the block, and guess who walked in on day 2? My old manager from Morningside, looking stunned like he'd walked into a parallel universe. He didn't say much, just looked around, took in the decor, photos of veterans, art made by kids, a framed napkin with Mr. Callahan's name scrawled on it, then turned to leave. But Trey stopped him at the door. Said, "You hungry?" The man blinked, nodded slowly. Trey pointed to a sign that read, "No shame at this table." Then said, "First meals on the house." And me? I brought him a plate, full breakfast, just like I gave Mr. Callahan that morning that changed everything. Didn't say a word. Just set it down and walked away. Some folks thought I should have turned him away. Said he didn't deserve kindness. Maybe they're right. But I wasn't doing it for him, that I was doing it for every hungry vet who walked into Morningside and left with nothing. For every woman like me who gets punished for doing what's right. For Mr. Callahan, who never asked for a damn thing, but gave everything anyway. Now Reggie's runs 7 days a week. We feed folks, hear their stories, give them jobs when no one else will. We host open mic nights for vets with PTSD. We do holiday meals for families who lost someone in uniform. And every morning, before we open, I walk past that photo of Mr. Callahan in the window and I whisper, "Still got biscuits for you, sir." Because some rules, they're worth breaking. And some people, they're worth building something for. So now I'll ask you this. If you were in my shoes that day, would you have served that man breakfast? And if someone told you charity doesn't pay the bills, would you still choose kindness? I hope so, because justice don't always look like a courtroom. Sometimes it walks in wearing dress blues. Sometimes it sits in a booth with shaking hands. And sometimes it's just a warm meal and someone who gives a damn. What do you think? Was I right to serve him? Was I right to feed the man who once fired me? Let's talk about it.